This is from the Izhbitzer. The Izhbitzer was the Rebbe of Reb Tzadok HaKohen. I don't know if that helps you, but he was one of the also Talmud of the Kotzker, and the Rebbe of Rabbeinu Pesachim. He was one of the early Hasidic thinkers in the early 1800s, mid 1800s, and he was a pretty radical thinker, and he has very interesting stuff. So I'm not guaranteeing that this is an interesting piece because I just sorted out, but we'll see what goes on. So this is from obviously going to the Gemara at the beginning of Pesachim. The on the eve of the 14th day of this, then you check chametz by the light of the candle. If you don't normally put in chametz, you don't have to check. So if you have like a warehouse or a cellar where you have lots of wine barrels.
Yeah, the top two, you have to check the top two.
Okay, good. So, when did you learn that? Very good.
I learned Mishnah Berurah with Shai Cohen.
Excellent. Okay. So Malcolm Shema, please smell chametz. In a b'dikas chametz, moretz she'adam tzarich levaro nakos atzmo kos yod b'psolos. So the concept of chametz, b'dikas chametz, indicates the person has to clean himself of any impurities, any refuse. But you have to remove from yourself all of your negios. You know what a negia is?
Afflictions?
No, that would be a nega, that's close, right? But it also means your personal interest. In other words, the negia is an interesting word which Chazal use to describe where a person has difficulty being objective because they have their personal interest, and their personal interest in, say, a certain outcome, a certain thing happening, a certain advantage that they could gain. So let's say, for example, if you have a court case in which you have an interest in it coming out one way or another, that means you have an negia, right? Let's say you have something which is nogea to your personal gaiva, right? So of course you have an negia because it means you have an interest in it coming out one way or the other way. And it's very hard for you to be objective about it. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's something which touches you. Goa means to touch. It's something where it touches you personally. So therefore, it's hard for you to be objective. So a person has to try to remove all of his negios, which are personal. The place where you put and bring chametz requires b'dika. Place you don't bring in chametz, it's not required b'dika. So the Izhbitzer says, if you know that a certain place is a place where you don't have a personal vested interest, you have to check out to make sure you don't have a vested interest there. But it's an interesting issue because there is a assumption made by the Baal Musa, especially the author from the article. It's very big in the Giyas, and being aware of the Giyas that there's almost no area in a person's life a person doesn't have a Giyah. In other words, in everything you think about, everything you do, everything in which you come into contact, usually you have some sort of outcome or some sort of situation which is personally advantageous to you, and some sort of outcome or situation which is not personally advantageous to you. And you have some sort of that's at a very obvious level, but it's very, very often very subtle. In other words, you might not even realize yourself. You know what? It's something where if it comes out X, it's better for me. If it comes out Y, it's not better for me. And therefore, internally, I should say, I'm more inclined to X than I am to Y. So for example, let's say somebody comes to ask me a shiloh, right? So if I might have an interest, if the person is somebody who have a connection to, right, in asking the shiloh a certain way, right? So that is a negia. Let's say I want to have, I want to say a shear, right? And when the reason why I say the shear is not because I want to teach Torah, but because it makes me feel good to say a shear. So therefore, I feel pride if I say a shear. So those are all cases in which a person can have a negia. So the Izhbitzer is saying you don't have to always assume that there's negia involved. If it's a place, it seems to be a place where rationally you can assume that you have no negia, you have no vested interest. Answer b'dika, right? If you know you're clean in this respect, you don't have to check. It says, Leida inish b'nafshei. Person got to know his own soul, right? Like I said, in Musar, they were never 100% as I said, especially in the Barak, they're never 100% sure that people do themselves. It's not easy to know oneself. That's the difference between Musar and Hasidus to a large extent. Musar and Musar, I should say Musar and all other forms of Avodas Hashem. In Musar, people feel it's very hard for us to trust ourselves because the Nehiyas run very deep and we're not always aware of them. But the Izhbitzer is saying a person can know himself and he can know where I have Nehiyas and where I don't have Nehiyas. It's possible for a person to actually be aware of that. So he says, if a person knows that he's Naki, he doesn't have to check in this issue. So now Gemara asks a question. Now, here he goes into Drush, which until now is studied more or less Musar, even though he's using B'dikas Chametz as a metaphor, but here he goes into a fascinating extension of that metaphor. He says, obviously, Yain represents Torah, right? The there's a drush which Chazal say Lechem is Tersh B'Ksav and Yain is Tersh Malpeh. So there's an idea that wine represents the Tersh Malpeh, the Torah of a Talmid Chacham, right? So Martev Shal Yain, the wine cellar, represents where Talmid Chacham has his Torah and his memory banks and his own personal warehouse, right? So Mishani Makom Shemachnisim. So where you have to check you have to check in the Marteif, in a place where you normally would put the chametz, which is the two outer rows. So it says Izhbitzer, you know what? There are depths of the heart and thoughts where you have to check out whether you're really doing things l'shem shamayim, we're really doing things for the right reason, whether your motivations, your intentions are the right motivations and intentions. Right, and even if it looks at the mice, it's not even to do is okay, right? Again, going back to my example from before, right? The saying share, what could be wrong with saying share? But maybe the reason you're saying share is because you're about gaiva, and you get a special sense of gaiva out of saying share, right? You're learning Torah, but maybe the reason you're learning Torah is because you want to actually show that you're better than the other guy. You want to learn better than he does. So that's an igiyah. In that case, it's a very startling igiyah. You might not even realize yourself that you're competing with that other person and that you're trying actually to show that you're better than that person. So he says that's my even though it looks like he's doing the right thing. So what areas does the b'dika take place? Two rows on the surface of the entire cellar. Those has the two outer rows, which are the two upper rows. Luchos. So two rows, he says, it's a reference to the luchos, right? The luchos are two rows. 5 commandments on each one of the luchos, right? Luchos given Har Sinai, stay luchos, and they were given shtei shuros, 2 columns of writing. 1 column of writing on the first luach and the other column of writing on the other luach.
Is she saying that's the reason why it's the top is those two, or is it's also logical?
No, it's also logical, but he's giving a drush. So he's saying that, of course, it's primarily logical. But a lot of Hasidus is based on that premise that we take something which is logical and has its a simple shot, and we use it in order to go deeper and use it as a vehicle for understanding a level of drush, which is not the simple shot, which is something from which we can learn in not the topic itself, but something related to our own personal avodas Hashem. In other words, this idea of a Hasidic vort is very often the idea that there is a pshat, but there's also a level of talking to our avodas Hashem, and that's what we're trying to find out. Okay, so he says, you have to take all the Aseret Dibros. Okay, it's hard to understand in general what the point of that Aseret Dibros are, because there are many basic principles in Judaism, besides the Aseret Dibros. Why the Aseret Dibros chosen by Hakadosh Baruch Hu, specifically those Dibros to be on the Luchos? But obviously, they're supposed to, Aseret Dibros are supposed to represent the entire Torah. They were decided to go and wrote an entire Chibur, which we're trying to show where in the 613 mitzvos are all included in the luchos and in the Aseret Dibros. So a person is supposed to check because Aseret Dibros imunaki. With so many shuls the two outer and upper levels. Umar diyek el yoina ulifnei mimena. So one opinion, what does it mean? Basically saying one says it's the top one and the one behind it, right? You have a pile of rows going upwards and backwards. So you take the top one and the one behind it. So it says Izhbitzer, what does the top one and the one behind it mean? The top one is the first Dibra, right? What's the one behind it? The first top one in the second column of the Aseret Dibros. What's this top one of the second column of the Aseret Dibros? Lo Sirtzach, right? Because there's the first one, the first set of 5 is Anochi, and the first one, the second set of 5 is Lo Sirtzach, right? You got that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's one opinion. The other opinion is it's the top one and the one below it. So what's that? The top one is Anochi, the same one still. And the second one is Lo Yelecha, which is the second one in the order going down. So if it's the top one and one behind it, it's Anochi and Lo Yelecha. If it's the top one and one below it, it's Anochi. I'm sorry, top one and one behind it.
One below it.
Below it, it's Anochi and Lo Yelecha. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So Marti Anochi Lo Sirtzach. Those are two which require checking. Anochi Hainu Shiyeh Divrei Torah Kshurim B'libecha. Anochi means that the Divrei Torah should be connected in your heart. They should be tied, so to speak, in your heart. But Tzirtzach Hainu Shelo Tachshov B'os Chaverecha B'levavecha. So he says, well, I have to check two things. Right? Is your Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Are you connected to Kodesh Baruch Hu properly? And this thing which you have to do, and this issue where you're afraid that you have an Nehiyah, is your connection in this respect, in this deed you're about to do to Kodesh Baruch Hu appropriate? And also, are you to make sure you're not killing somebody else and doing it? In other words, is a Meram Chavero, is an appropriate thing to do? Like I said before, sometimes a person learns Torah in order to show they're better than somebody else. That is like Lo Sirtzach, right? I'm learning Torah in order to murder him, not physically, obviously, spiritually, right? If I'm learning Torah in order to show I'm better than that person, that's Lo Sirtzach. So I'm gonna have to check my own connection to Kodesh Baruch Hu, and also that I'm not damaging somebody else. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a nice shot. If a person can clarify that he's okay in these areas, then then that is a sign that he's okay with the rest of the Torah as well. Obviously, because he checked as both of them as Baruch Chavero, he's doing well, right? And because there are 3 points, and this is obviously Zohar Kodesh. What are the 3 points? Hem Le'el Vashem Yisparach, Uklai Yisrael, Vesatzmo. It's a fascinating idea. I was not familiar with the Zohar before he brings it down here, right? To love Hashem, and to love Am Yisrael, and to love yourself. What does it mean to love in this case? It means what?
What does the 3 Nekudos have to do with what we're saying?
First, you have to make sure that what you're doing is based on Avas Hashem, right? That's low.
Yeah.
It's based on the love of Klal Yisrael. That's checking out the Lo Sirtzach aspect, right? That it should be you're Meron Chavero and doing what you're about to do is appropriate, is correct. And what are you checking? You're checking your own negias, right? So that's avas atzmo, to love yourself, meaning to make sure that what you're doing is the best and right thing to do. Okay, so the bedika is checking in yourself to make sure that you have the proper love of Hashem and the proper love of the rest of Am Yisrael in the proper places in what you're about to do.
Mhm.
Clear then?
Yeah.
Okay. V'sosi Dashmo. That's Shmuel's opinion. That's the top one and the one behind it. Anochi and Lo Sirtzach, right? V'Rav Amar Anochi V'Lo Yelecha. Rav says the two things you're checking are Anochi and Lo Yelecha, right? The top one and the one below it. Anochi K'moch Nizbar. So Anochi already said that's to make sure that your connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and what you're doing is the right connection. But what about Lo Yelecha? So he says, you know what? I'll tell you. There's not, according to Rav, the issue is not ben Mechaber, but the issue is your own personal pleasure. That you're not going to do things because of the hana you personally received from it. In other words, the main thing to check is that not after connect. Obviously, both agree that you have to check if this lishma in the sense that you're connecting the Kodesh Baruch Hu with what you're doing. But the next thing you have to check is, according to Shmuel, okay, and how does it relate to other people? But in Rav, next thing you have to check is, even if I think I'm doing it because I'm connected to Kodesh Baruch Hu, am I deriving pleasure from it or am I not deriving pleasure from it? You know, that's the Gemara says about the one asked question by Esther and by Yoel, who had Esther with about a relationship with Achashverosh, and Yoel with about a relationship with Sisera, right? So Gemara asks, how can you be Mishabech them? How can you praise them? How they had enough from what they were doing, right? Yoel, Esther had a pleasure from having a relationship with Achashverosh, and Yoel had a pleasure from having a relationship with Sisera. So the Gemara says, no, call the Basar and Shorashayim, Roy Tzaddik. A tzaddik cannot derive pleasure from a situation in which a Russia is deriving pleasure. Because the tzaddik is so pained by the Russia getting pleasure that they themselves get no pleasure out of it. So from that, it's you see that a person has to check, I'm not doing something from my own hana, from my own pleasure, my own benefit. Even if it's like kind of like us checking that I'm doing it for the right reasons, that I'm doing it for Noach Hashem Elokecha, and checking I'm not doing it for the wrong reasons. I'm not doing it for my own personal benefit, enjoyment, and pleasure. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay. So as he says, and this is these are main things which a person requires bedika in what they do in this world. Everybody agrees, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, right? Rav Shmuel's the second check is Lo Sirtzach, which is Lo Chavero. Rav's the second check is as Lo Yelecha, which means it has to do with me checking that I'm my own personal pleasures, not the motivating factor what I'm doing, right? If a person is knocking these things, it's a right that he's clean in everything he does. Because you don't have to check all the Aser Sedibros. Even though that's the point of the state shurus, you don't have to check all of them. You have to check two of them. According to Shmuel, these two, according to Rav, who are these two. So it says so who do we possibly like in this regard? He says, if a person's okay in he's doing things to be connected to Baruch Hu, and he's making sure not that it doesn't conflict or affect negatively his friend, then he's okay. You don't have to check so much, and it's not for your own hana. Even if you're nana, it's okay as long as you're doing it for the right reasons. And that's kind of like it says Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, and it says before Rabbi Yehuda Nasi died, he picked up his 10 fingers and he said he had no hana from Olam Hazeh. And everybody asked, what do you mean? He had the delicacies. It says he had out-of-season fruits on his table at all times during the year. So what do you mean he didn't get enough from this world? So the idea is obviously they didn't have enough from this world in a way which affected him. So what I think what the Izhbitzer is saying, and saying halacha like Shmuel, is that deriving hana from what you're doing, according to Rab, is no good. According to Shmuel, it's not as a big a problem. According to Shmuel, as long as what you're doing is l'shem shamayim, and it works for us, the fact that you're driving hana from it is not such a big problem. Again, this is something which not everybody would agree. The Netzib says, in anything you do, if and that's something we talked about before about your Esther and Yoel. He says if you're going to do an Aver Lishma like Esther and Yoel did by sleeping with Achashverosh and with Sisera, you can't derive any hana whatsoever, which is much more like Rav. But according to Shmuel, as long as you're doing it for the right, and that would be really a much more Musa perspective. Any hana you get is a problem. You can't get any hana from something personal, and again, not personal, physical, material pleasure. But according to Shmuel and according to what the Izhbitzer is saying, the main cheshbon a person has to have is ben chaberon, ben makom. All other cheshbonis are not as significant as those two. You have those two, and that you assess yourself. You make a cheshbon nefesh, do anything properly. That's good enough. So according to what he says, the bedika, again, the premise of bedika is that a person has to check bedikas chametz. A person has to check everything they do based on those two measures, on the measure of anochi shemokecha and on the measure of lo yelocha. Okay, is that clear?
Yeah.
I think it's a nice piece. Let's see another piece. Okay. This obviously from Daf Dalit. How damar dunu dini? This guy was one of the Pesachim talks about a bunch of people who always went around saying certain things, right? And one of the people went around saying, take my case. Be done my day. Judge me. Right? And one says, Ishtakaf mi donas. It came out that it was Mshebet Don. The Stephen says, Don Yadinamo. So he was unwittingly, he was quoting this pasuk, which I should say is paraphrasing this pasuk, which indicates it's from Mshebet Don. The tzaddik on that Gemara Daf Dalet says that from the sayings a person says, even in midei chol, even in things that have to do with one's mundane daily life, not just in matters of Torah. A statement which a person is accustomed to say indicates something about that person's shorish and neshama. So if you always say something, there's a phrase which is your catchphrase, the one you always use, that indicates something about your shorish and neshama. Okay, so here, if you kept saying donu dini, it means it must be shorish and neshama, must be Mshebet Don. Okay, it's very interesting Gemara, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the Gemara says at the beginning of the Maseches Pesachim, a person should always speak b'lashon nekiya. You familiar with the beginning of Pesachim?
Sorry?
You familiar with the beginning of Maseches Pesachim?
No.
It says the person always supposed to speak b'lashon nekiya, and we learn even after the Mishnah it says or l'arbasa. It doesn't say choshech l'arbasa, right? We say it in a nice way. We don't say when it gets dark. We say when it's light. Even though we mean when it gets dark. Or l'arbasa means at night of the 14th day, right?
Yeah.
Say it in a nice way. And one talks about that the Torah sometimes goes out its way to say something nice way. It says, Behema sheri nenu tahora as opposed to behema tmeya, right? You familiar with that drasha?
No.
It says there's a behema Torah, there's a behema sheri nenu Torah, right? It talks about animals, but in Parshas Noach, where it says bring about so it's bring animals on the table. It says that something he's bringing from the behemoths which are Toros and the behemoths which are not Toros. Why didn't it say behemoths tmeos?
No, spirit lashon.
Lashon here, right? So a person it talks about birur lashon, to say things in ways which are refined, which are elevated, which are better. The Rambam holds that the reason why Hebrew is called Lashon HaKodesh is because there are no terms in Hebrew for sexual activities or for the sexual organs of the body. All the different terms we have for those activities, like Tashmish Amita, using the bed, right? Or bia, right? Those are all borrowed terms. They're not terms which actually talk about the actual ma'isa, right? We're talking about the osamokum or the aver, right? Osamokum for the woman, aver for the man. These are all borrowed terms. They're no terms like you have in other languages, precise terms for the organs or the activity involved in sexual activities. So the Rambam, so it's a very similar idea the Rambam makes, and they say that that's what's called Lashon HaKodesh, which is it's a lot of it's about saying things in an appropriate, refined way, not saying things in a coarse or inappropriate way. You with me on this?
Yeah.
Okay. So come on, see Shemavia Hagamara. Zeshmar Kedi with Sankon, right? This guy said that he got a portion of the lechem apari, the size of a piece of lamb. The other guy said he got the size of a tail of a salamander, a tail of a lizard. And Mara says, you know what? The guy who said a tail of a lizard, he has a shemet shopsul. Let's check out if it's appropriate to be a kohen. And what comes out, he wasn't. He had some psul in his family. Couldn't have been a kohen. He had to go down for the guna, because the way a person expresses oneself, in of itself, shows something about what a person is about. So therefore, a person who can express himself in a Torah way about the small amount of the carbon he got, that person is a kosher person. But a person who expresses himself in a coarse way, it says it's like I got the amount like a tail of a lizard, and that already is something which seems that there's something wrong with him. He's expressing himself in a coarse and inappropriate way. There's something wrong. Let's check and see if the doctor is suitable to be a Kohen. You with me on this?
Mm-hmm.
Connect the Omar. Connect the Omar Botzim B'Tahara. I forgot the language. What's going on there? Let's see if we can find it quickly. Hold on a second. My battery's running low. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can plug this in somewhere. Hold on.
Well, how the Gemara said who the Amar Dunudini, and then how is this going on? I don't understand how it's connected.
Can you feel a little bit louder? I can't hear you.
He quotes the Gemara where it says who the Amar Dunudini,
Yeah.
and then they found that he was from Dan, and then it says that from the
Yeah, so I'll show you the Gemara.
learned how.
Right, so I'll show you the Gemara. Hold on a second.
Right?
Hold on.
I would never think that Caleb, you would get the capo from paper. Right? If you so right, the guy you are the king, you're Bahima, I take care of you, and now it's lost or stolen. So I pay you $100. Now when the guy comes back, the guy comes I get the capo. You would think the only reason why you would let me buy you off and get the capo is because, meaning this is all psychological, right? The second I pay you, I get the rights to the capo, right? You would only give me the right to the capo mentally if I was actually the Nafesh Terfa, right? I was involved in taking care.
Okay, so where it says this Gemara. Okay, it says here. How do my Dunudini? The guy says, judge my judgment, right? Amri Shami Ami did me Dunkas. You see, done the Amokhat Shift Israel. How the Avakos of Amar Akif Yama Sisne Bi Rasa. Right, the bushes on the seashore and the cypresses are beautiful, etc. And they found that since talking about the seashore, and he has a special chabib, so the seashore is from Shevet Zvulun, right? And so then the Gemara had previously said, let's go back. On Daf Gimel base, it said here. I thought it was about Lechem Party, but here it says that there's some. It's about something else. No, it was about Lechem Party. First Gemara says.
If the commissioner.
is on Gimel base, right? So there's a whole sugya before this. Let me take out the English here. It's too much English.
You would think in some cases.
Right. So take a look here. It says there's base on base, right?
You're paying me for
The time done, my time in local study lele. Why does it not say night? Why does it say Torah Basar? Lishta Mali the Naka. It's saying in a nice way. Shuman Levi, Lo Ma'atzil Dam Davram Begunim repeat. Person should not say something degrading, right? He came had put Shmona Osios. The Torah changed, added 8 letters. Loti Davram Begunim repeat. Not to say something inappropriate, not even inappropriate, something less appropriate. Says to the Torah animals from the non-Torah animals. It doesn't say it says right? But Papa says another case. Doesn't say it says and Mark then goes on and says by Azov, it says Merkov, which means to ride, and Isha, because riding a horse is considered to be not stick for a woman. That's why used to ride side saddle, and now with their legs on either side of the horse. And so it says Moshav instead of saying Merkov. And then the Gemara goes on to say, give other examples where it says here, how to trade to me, that obviously coming to rap. This sugya made me feel like a tired pig. They said, made me feel like a tired goat. Rav wouldn't talk to the guy who said, and because what's in Lashon Nakia? How to trade Talmidei, Davi Yassi Kamidihilla, Kamina Rizmi Zakai. From the Kavi Rebbe, Siva Rebbe, Kamina Rabbi Yocha. Karamar Midnema, Boatskim, Betara, Vein Moskim, Vein Moskim Betara. Right? Why do you harvest grapes Betara, but not olives Betara? Karamar name Ba, Boatsim Betara, Moskim Betuma. He used the word tuma instead of tara. So Amar the Rebbe said, wherever it says, Muftach Ani Bezeshimor Rabbi Yisrael. I'm sure this person will become a place because he used Lashon Nakia. And then in another case, it says there were Tani plus the Kahani, there were 3 Kohanim. Chadamari Higani Kapul. I got a mouth of Lecha the size of a bean. Chadamari Higani Kazais, I got the size of an olive. Chadamari Higani Kaznav, it's not how I got the size of the tail of a lizard. Bazkwa Akrab Matzabo Shemetz Psul. Right? They found something puzzle about that going, right? And the Gemara then says, was it Shemetz Psul? No, it was Shachatz Psul. Really, that he was about Gaiva. Not necessarily, it was actually a puzzle. But anyway, all these Gemaras at the beginning of Pesachim are talking about speaking B'Lashon Nakia. You see all that? And then the Gemara goes on and says, later on, at the next page, it says, How Domar Donu Dini Shmami Nami Done Kasi.
Saying that's Lashon Nakia from saying you're from done?
No. He's saying that's how Lashon Nakia, not Nakia, but the way a person talks says something about his Nesharish Neshama. So Don Dini is not to do with Torah not being good or bad. But that showed his Nesharish Neshama. That his Nesharish Neshama was Shevet Don. And on the previous summit, where it talks that people spoke Lashon Nakia, Lashon non-Nakia, it shows say about their Nesharish Neshama, was it a refined Nesharish Neshama or not a refined Nesharish Neshama? You see that connection?
Yeah.
They also do with the Shorish Neshama, which is manifest, bring itself out in the way a person talks. Okay?
Yeah.
So getting back to the Izhbitzer.
I think it's the.
What?
No, nothing.
So he says, the entire, the Aschola of this Masechta is all about Birur Lashon, how to speak. And how you, when you speak, it clarifies either your own refinement or where you come from. Also have to do the Shorish of your Neshama. Is that Komas Yoshe Via Gemara? Zesh marking the San Con, the son of the Torah, Negamar Botsi Matara, Vamar Muftani, Boshi Amora Rabbi Israel. That's the beginning of the Masechta. By Siyum Masechta, the end of the Masechta, where we Psachim Lo Yochal. Talks about Erev Pesach, you shouldn't eat in the afternoon. Hainu Birurim Bachilos. When you should eat and when you shouldn't eat. So it starts with Birur Lashon, how you speak, and Birur Achila, how you eat. Negative pasuk Shomer Piv Ulashono Shomer Mitzvos Nafsho. If you watch your mouth, what you eat, and your lashon, how you speak, you save yourself from tzoros. That's how you save yourself from all sorts of negative things. And Pesach, with the mitzvah of Dibur, Haggadah, and the mitzvah of Achila, Korban Pesach, Matzah, Moror, is to be Mavara Piv Ulashono. That you should speak right, and you should eat right. And that way you'll be able to live properly. If you know how to speak and you know how to eat, what comes out of your mouth and what goes into your mouth, then you're living the right way. That's what Torah wants to do. I think it's a beautiful word. No?
Yeah. What's the difference between Shomer Piv and Lashono?
Piv is what you eat,
Oh,
your mouth. Lashon is what you speak, your tongue. Got it?
yeah.
Okay, we'll stop here for today. Shkoyach.
Thank you, Rebbe.
Enjoy the rest of your Yontif.
Good morning.
Take care. Bye.
1, 2, 3, 7. Either I have to pay you for it. Either I have to pay you for it, or either I have to pay you for it,